Welcome to Slightly Off Script, the marriage show where we remind you that marriage can be stupid good and wicked fun. I'm one of your hosts, Bethany Needham, here with my favorite human, Andrew David Needham.
Middle name coming back again.
Now the world knows. You can be scolded by all of our listeners.
Can you believe 2024 is coming to a close?
No, I can't. It's wild.
The year of our Lord, 2024. It rhymes.
Yeah, it works. What makes it the year of our Lord? Just that it rhymes?
It's after BC and then AD after death. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. All right. It's been a wild year.
I almost said AC.
You've been done with seminary, 2 seconds, and already you just dropped all of everything you learned.
I'm done.
You're done.
I did it.
Yeah.
That's great.
You are now a graduated seminarian.
That's right.
Congratulations. I'm proud of you.
That's one of my highlights for this year. How about you? What are some of your 2024 highlights?
Goodness. Well, a few minutes ago, I needed you to remind me what happened in 2024. And as you were listing things, the things you were listing, I'm like, that was this year? That's how crazy this year has been. I'm going to throw out the craziest one you listed because I forgot about, and it still makes me laugh, is I got to swim with pigs.
Swimming with the pigs.
Yeah. I don't even feel like it needs to be explained. It just is.
You don't feel like it needs to be explained?
No, it's just exactly what it sounds like. I swam with wild pigs.
Wild is a little strong.
I don't know if you saw those pigs, but they're pretty wild.
They were aggressive pigs.
You say aggressive, you say potato, I say potato. Yeah. It was epic. For the adventure-loving gal in me, I ate it up. It was fantastic. I didn't eat them. Sorry. That was a bad choice of words.
It was, we fed the pigs and then we had a pig roast. No, we did not do that.
We swam with the pigs. It was amazing. If you're ever, in the Bahamas, I recommend it. Go look it up. It's worth it, maybe.
This was your Christmas gift from last year.
Yeah.
So pretty impressive. They still remember that. That's great.
What about you? Give us a couple others.
I think this summer we rented a house in Maine on a lake, which for me was glorious. I just loved it. It was awesome. And we fished, we kayaked. I will always remember I watched the Celtics win the finals sitting by a campfire.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that was really, really fun. It was nice to slow down because we had just come off Mercy's graduation, another highlight. Got to see her graduation party. People, if you kids have graduated, that's just a crazy time, the end of senior year.
Wild.
Yeah. But it was also incredible. So going from that and landing at that lake house and just being able to breathe and sort of, catch our breath rather, that was really nice.
Cooked up some lobsters like true New Englanders.
Yeah. Got some lobsters. It was good.
That was awesome. And then, empty nest moon, which is a phrase that you invented.
It should be a thing. People do baby moons.
So explain that. We dropped our daughter off at university. And then we were like, all right, what are we going to do? We don't want to just go home and cry.
No, I wanted to mark it and celebrate, not in like a weird, yay, she's finally out, but just hey, this is a big deal for us. This is our youngest kid. We're leaving him at college. And so we called it an empty nest moon. And essentially we went back to where once upon a time we did a baby moon.
That's wild.
Yeah, when I was expecting Mercy, right? It was Mercy. Yes.
It was Mercy. Yes.
Yeah. So I was pregnant with Mercy. We did a baby moon. And then we were right back there celebrating this college moon or empty nest moon. And it was so much fun. I recommend it. Even if you like kids graduated 10 years ago, it's never too late.
Never too late.
Yeah.
We'll just keep doing it. I think
every year.
It's an annual tradition. I think we talked, I think in one of our other podcasts, even talk about play, how like we don't always have these magical moments. There's so much of marriage is mundane, but we did have one thing. We went down to the Tampa area and then last minute I was like, hey, like there's a pretty good deal on like I could cash in some points here and we could go over to Disney. So we checked into this hotel that we have like loyalty points at. I don't always get upgrades, but like the lady's like, we got you covered here. It was for one night, but we had this suite that often goes for like $2,000 a night. Like
It was
I would never
ridiculous.
like spend that money on this suite, but it was crazy.
Yeah, it was amazing.
You could see the Epcot fireworks.
Yeah, we got invited to an event on the rooftop with like free candy. I guess there was fireworks going on, but I was just like stuck on the free candy, filling my little brown
She's pretty
baggie.
easy to please. You give her some Whoppers and some
Yeah.
Swedish fish, and you're doing great. So
It was so fun. That was one of those like
Yeah.
all the things coming together, magical kind of moments. So yeah, we celebrated good on that. So
at the same time, lots of change this year. I mean, obviously, there's the sending our daughter to college and being an empty nester. We've kind of in this year gone before the Lord and just said, like, all right, Lord, where do you want us? What do you want us to do? What is the best investment of our time and our talent and our treasure? And at times we thought we might be relocating to other parts of the country. And we were just like, wherever you want to send us, Lord, like we just, as long as, you make it clear that this is something that's worth investing in, that's kingdom minded. And I feel like God often does, he both surprises us and sometimes leads us on a long journey in a circle where we end up, we're like, nope, God's called us to stay at our home in Hooksett and to double down here and to invest in some new things, but to kind of do it from the same point. And so what a journey.
yeah, it's been a journey, and we're no strangers to transition. I feel like this has been somewhat part of our story throughout, and that's probably true for most people, but every once in a while I'll meet someone that's like, I've been in the same house for whatever 30 years and all that. I just don't even know that life. I feel like even as a kid, we were never living in the same place for very long, and little did I know that'd be preparation for the next season of life and marriage. And so I think today we're going to talk through navigating those transitions, change, what that looks like for us. Because I know that we're not the only ones that are walking through or will walk through change. And that can definitely be a tension and a stress on a marriage. And I think there are some things that we've had to learn and also implement in our marriage along the way. And I don't think we've done it all beautifully and perfectly by any means, but I think it's worth a conversation today.
Did you know that the end of 2024 means that we have lived in this home longer than any residence that we've had in our entire marriage? 22 years. In the first,
Wow.
I think in the first 9 years of marriage, we moved 11 times. Or it might have been 11 years, 9 times. Again, math gets a little fuzzy as you get older, but I mean, that's either way, it's not an exaggeration. Like we were like professionals at moving. Like we were very good at minimalism.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's good to be rooted, but it's also good to kind of look back and see the way that the Lord has led us through some different changes. And so I'm going to put you on the spot to start. And I want to think about the transition because you put your energy and focus into the home in terms of when our kids were little. You did work some odd jobs here and there. I mean, you're a professional odd jobber.
Yeah.
But those things were kind of to support the main mission, which was to be present for the kids. And then when they were both in full-time school, you made a shift.
Yeah. That was one of probably the first, other than obviously us getting married, was a massive transition. But a massive transition was I had been primarily a stay-at-home mom, again, with some I'm like the queen of side hustles. I was always something, but I primarily was with the kids. And so when Mercy she's our youngest, transitioned into kindergarten, I didn't necessarily have a plan. Again, we mentioned we got married really young. I did go to Bible school for a year, but I didn't come into marriage with necessarily this career trajectory. In some ways, my career trajectory was to get married and have babies, and
Like mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Got that done quick.
check.
You're an overachiever.
Yeah. So once Mercy went to school, in some ways, I started to feel this lost, like, okay, so they're going to be at school full time. What do my days look like?
Yes.
And for me, God opened this door for me to go on staff at our church full time. And it happened. The schedules worked out where literally the day I put the kids on the bus for the first time, both of them, full day, I headed out and went to the church and started working full time. And that was a massive transition, not just on my end, but that also was when you went full time with the Andy Needham band. So we were like, go big or go home in that season of transition. And it took some major flexibility. It was a season, I look back and it was a beautiful time, but also I think if I could pull anything out of that, the thing that I learned was I needed to be willing to accept help from other people. And I didn't realize that that was a struggle for me prior to that. But when I was working full time at the church, you were on the road full time with your band. And I did still, the kids were in school full time, but I had these two little ones. There were little things that all of a sudden I realized I cannot do all of the things that I did before I worked full time and you were full time on the road. One thing that I remember from that season being a massive shift, and it may seem so simple, but I had a friend that was just looking for some very, like, again, side kind of work. And she loved to clean. And she's like, hey, could I be helpful to you by coming and just cleaning your house once a week, just helping with some major cleaning? And I just remember thinking, first, honestly, feeling shame, like, oh my goodness, is my house so dirty? People are offering to clean it. But
you're going to have to clear that by the butler.
Yeah. And then I was like, I am a youth director. Like, I am not living I have a house cleaner kind of a life. As I think I spoke to you about it and we were kind of processing through, and I was like, you know what? I could budget wisely for that. It really wasn't as crazy as I had built up in my head. And if I just make this one shift, allow somebody to step into my world and help me with this, how that was going to help me in terms of just being able to be present for my kids and continue doing the work. So yeah, that transition, I think the one thing I would pull out of that is being willing to let people help you and being, I guess, open to what that help might look like. That might be outside of your comfort zone, but could really take a load off.
I'd say a lesson that I had to learn the hard way by doing it poorly was recalibrating the rhythms, especially we would call it landing.
Yes.
And this idea of like especially when you recalibrate, and we're in recalibration right now, and we'll talk in a few minutes about your new role, but sometimes we ramp up towards the like getting into it, like getting the kids off to school or getting to work or getting to, and we don't think about the getting from and getting back home and what that looks like. And we had a kind of an extreme version of that because I would sometimes be gone, sometimes gone for a night, couple nights, sometimes for weeks at a time. And I'd come back home. It's kind of like stepping on a treadmill that's already running. And that doesn't usually go well. So
not in the YouTube videos I've seen.
Yeah, there's some really good ones out there that hopefully I always kind of have that nightmare when I'm at the gym that I'll be added to that list. But the point of this is to understand that, like, for me, that was an area of learning how to transition back into the home and back into things. And, I felt like we really worked hard to try to, like, as much as possible, be at the kids' events and show up for things. But in terms of you and me, I think that was a huge learning area. I mean, I would say for me, that was a huge learning area for sure.
Yeah. And I taught it to you.
You did. You kind of just pointed it out, called it out. Well, and that is part of it sometimes, because I think that sometimes we have conflict in change and transition. And we feel the conflict, but we don't know, like, we don't see the pattern. We don't see the why behind it. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing. I mean, you have the gift of sometimes speaking for the Holy Spirit, I think. So you can call things out pretty well, not very bashful.
Yeah. Well, and it is, I mean, we joke, but there's a side of it where it makes sense, right? Like, you had just spent however many weeks traveling around with these guys, living like a band life. It's a very different schedule than being home with two small children. And so you were facing the challenge of just transitioning your own schedule, sleep patterns, everything else. Meanwhile, there is a side where you're landing at home and I'm feeling I want immediate relief that
Yes.
You've landed back home. And so we use the term a lot of that we needed to extend extra grace during that transition period of you landing. Like, you needed a couple of days to sort of get your sleep patterns correct, everything else, like, figure things out. And we needed together, we needed a couple of days to sort of find our rhythms, and just knowing that ahead of time and being like, we just need extra grace during this and not just be at each other. And you also didn't need me throwing the kids at you, like, welcome back, here they are. Like,
well, I think that the principle that is behind this, obviously there's the transition part, but then like, I think when we have change or transition happening in our lives, like we will have conflict, but it's like starting to ask the question, like, what's behind this? Like, why is this showing up in our life? Like, what is it? Sometimes it's exhaustion. Sometimes it's like expectation, or there's different things that could be behind that. For me, it was probably all of those things together, but so I'm just I'm an overachiever. So yeah, another huge transition for us came later on. You stepped out of your role at the church. And by that time, I was not traveling with the band. I was in a ministry role, working remotely, traveling around New England, which I love to do. And we had this sense as our kids were approaching high school that perhaps God was calling us to move from a place that we love, from our first home and so many deep, beautiful memories, and to move to where we live today. That was not something we took lightly, particularly when you have kids that are either approaching or in the high school range. That this is going to be like one of those moments in their life that they will remember. And it was not easy to decide to do it, and it was not easy doing it. And then there was a pandemic, so it was we had a lot of things that were hard about it, but we would both say today that was God's leading in our life. And so when you have a decision to make like that, that's an uprooting that impacts the entire family, that isn't necessarily like, even though it was a clear decision, it was not like 100% on this side of the ledger and 0 on the other. Like there's a cost, there's things that we were leaving behind. Like when you think about those kind of decisions and the greater impact, like what do you think about how, like what would you say to somebody else or say to yourself if you look back on that?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is remembering in the process of it. Obviously, we were really seeking God in that transition, and you're absolutely right. We knew that there was going to be cost. There was no way around it. But at the same time, God did make it very clear that this was something that he was opening this door for us, that we made the decision to step into it. And to remember that even in those moments, even when God leads you places, that obedience isn't always followed by these clear affirmations. There are times when there's like moments where, oh gosh, God just really affirmed this decision. Our move to New Hampshire, I would put more in the category of, someone said, I couldn't even tell you who I'm quoting right now, but they had given the advice, don't forget in darkness what God has revealed in the light. And the move to New Hampshire honestly felt a little bit like that, because we made this decision. We were very clear that, and you and I were on the same page, like, okay, this is what God is doing. And in some ways it felt like from the moment we stepped foot here, it just got worse. And even some of the decisions, which I won't get into now but like for our kids' mental health and everything else, it actually felt like it went the opposite direction.
Yeah, we thought it might be a solution, and it didn't feel that way at all.
Not at all. And so kind of in those seasons, I would just give the reminder of like, just reminding yourself of what God had called you to. And so maybe that means, we've talked about journaling before, but like when God is walking you through, journaling these things that you can go back to, and remembering that even in those moments where maybe it feels like when a pandemic hits, like months after you move to a new location, like, okay, God, we know that you brought us here. We know that you are faithful, that you will not leave us, that you're walking with us, and just trusting him through that. Because the moving, that was a huge one. And then staying on the same team. We were united in the decision. And in some ways, I think we had to hold tight as we walked through some of these. Because the easy thing would have been to almost like point and blame, like, oh, our kids were already, we joked, it was a month before we stopped hearing, you ruined our lives. Like, yeah. So you and I kind of staying like that kind of united front of, God, we are together in this. We're walking in this. Our kids might hate us for a bit, but we really believe that you are in this. And again, hindsight's 2020, but I look back and I'm like, man, God was all over that.
I completely agree. There's a point of like deciding together though what things are in that closed-handed and what are in the open-handed thing too, because we knew the direction God was leading us. He was calling us to move to New Hampshire. There were plans that we had to change because, and some of that was based on feedback from our kids. Like the way we thought, like to me, I had this like, dream of like, man, if they could do in New Hampshire, there's an online school program. I'm like, this will be the high life. We'll be going on vacation when everybody else is in school. This will be great. And we realized really quickly that like, hey, and our kids gave us the feedback, but part of it was that we had uprooted them from their social circles. We were engaging in church and other things like that, but they felt the deficit, particularly because they had been in-person schooling for so long that they were missing that. And so we adjusted, and God provided for us to do that. And even that wasn't perfect, but it was one of those things where it's like, I think sometimes, and this is where we, don't hold so tightly to the scripts might be part of the principle here, is like God leads us in a direction. He shows us the next right thing to do. We can have confidence in his leadership of us, but then when it comes to the minutia of every day and even sort of the way we wrote the plan, and I think sometimes the thing that even holds us back from that is that we told other people like, oh yeah, this is our plan. Like that we're moving to New Hampshire and the kids are going to be in online school and and we almost start to defend our plan rather than just following God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wrestle with that this will come up in taking on a new job too, but this is something as somebody with ADHD, we joke about my professional odd jobs, that there is that temptation in my own pride of wanting to like, I'm going to prove that this, we're sticking to this thing, and not being sensitive to the Holy Spirit redirecting something. And our whole thing was moved to New Hampshire. I was going to homeschool the kids with the online because Lord knows no one's education needs to be in my hands. But for me, 3 days in, when my kids looking at me and they're like, this is not going to work. And that was one thing. I was like, all right, one kid down. I still got one going, whatever. And then when the other one was like, this is not working. Definitely having one of those moments of, what are people going to think? The whole purpose, my purpose, granted, not God's actual, the purpose I had sort of built around.
For I know the plans I have for me. Declare with me.
Yeah. And I did. I had to lay those down, and not just my plans, but also what other people would think of this shift in plans. And I had to come before God and think about our family in this season and what was best for our kids.
Yes, there are probably people that make judgments or make comments or think things, and like that's fine, but they don't know the whole story. Like they're not the ones who are leading our lives like it should be God. And second of all, like, let's get over ourselves. Like, let's not think too highly of ourselves. People are not thinking about you as much as you think they are. Like that whole spotlight syndrome that we get of like, people are all worried about, I know that like I've had that at different, like even when I left the band and I had a, quote unquote public persona, like people were not waking up over breakfast being like, oh, I wonder what's happening with Andy today. Like nobody's thinking that. Like, yes, my friends are, and maybe occasionally somebody like sees
maybe
a post
not
online.
Even our friends.
No, not really. They're like, it's Andy. He'll be fine. So like getting over ourselves, because those things can like trying to maintain some sort of reputation or something like that. Again, we need to follow God, and when it's time to be resilient and push through, and when it's time to release, and like those are hard decisions to make. I don't want to say make those things lightly, but just really be cautious of getting too rigid on the whole plan. Like I often say, like in Scripture, we want Scripture to be a map. Like we want God to just give us a map of our life. Like, God, just show me the script, show me where to go. And God in his providence is like, no, I'm just going to give you a lamp to your feet. Like, I'm just going to show you, I'm going to give you direction. I'm going to go with you, and I'm going to show you your next step. Like that's the way that God works so much. And get to know me, because if you get to know me, you know the direction to go in. And if you follow my word, I will light and illuminate your path, but I'm not going to show you the whole path. And there's going to be things, because if you knew, you probably wouldn't go. So we've often said that. So, yeah.
No, I agree. Moving, obviously a big one. The kids' schooling, we just mentioned it in this, but that was a big one for us and we have done a few different things.
Well, you want to talk about an area that people tend to have opinions on is how to school your kids. I think some of we've said this too, that like some of our decisions would probably be different even now than they were 15, 18 years ago.
Yeah.
When we were making some of these decisions, I guess not 18, 15, 13, 12, whatever it was, how many years ago.
Numbers are hard.
Yeah. But do you want to talk about like how we kind of thought through what is the best thing for our kids in terms of schooling?
So one of the things we said from the very beginning was that we weren't going to make sort of a blanket choice for our kids' schooling, that we wanted to take it a year at a time and each kid individually. And some of this was we I feel like before our kids even entered school, I was already getting a lot of feedback from people on
Here's a book you should read about why
yeah.
I did it right.
Yeah, like here, you should do this, or this is definitely the thing. And it's hard when these are all people that you respect.
Absolutely.
You're looking, you're like, yeah, your kids are amazing, but they're all saying different things. It's like, and I did it this way. And you realize, I think kind of the conclusion we came to is, okay, we answer to God for how we're making this decision with our kids. We have stewardship over these kids, and we need to make a decision based on them. So that's been sort of our guiding, whatever you want to call it, throughout the years. And it's been interesting because we've had our kids started out in public school, which was not everyone in our lives' favorite decision that we made, but that was where we felt like God started us. And then we had one kid stay in public school. Public school, they were thriving. They were doing great. That was not so for the other one. And so we ended up making a transition into a private school. So we had one in private school, one in public school. And we did that for a while. Transition to, again, New Hampshire. We tried homeschool for 3 seconds. And
we can at least say that we did it.
Yeah, did it. Check.
Yeah.
No, we tried that. We did. I'm feel like I'm going to get all these emails.
We went back to, then private school, then back into public school. And so it's been
all of the above. And it's been, again, based on that first, what we decided, we're going to take it 1 year at a time. And it's going to be each kid individually, because each kid, they had different needs. And it wasn't based on necessarily the kids' wants and whims.
No.
This was like, what is best for this kid in this season? And it hasn't always been easy. There's been some tough transitions along the way, but I feel like we navigated that in a way where I look back and I'm like, I feel like we did the best we could with each season as we went along. And we weren't afraid. I will say because we had to do this, we weren't afraid to say, you know what?
That's not working.
We thought this was working. This is definitely not working. And we got to make a shift. So
yeah. 2 things I want to say about this. First of all, one of the huge factors you have to consider is just who God's made you to be. And so there are decisions that we made that, again, there's a conviction element, but there's also just like the reality of like, and I want to be careful. Like, I think sometimes you will fall into the trap of being like, I don't have the intellect to do this. I don't think it's a matter of intellect. It's a matter of temperament. It is the ADHD, that side of things.
Oh, to
too.
homeschool?
Yeah, to homeschool or something.
Oh, I totally have the intellect.
I don't doubt that at all. But the other thing I want to say as a principle here is that you can use schools, whether it's homeschool curriculum or if it's private school or public school, any environment, to help support the formation of your kids. But ultimately, the shepherding of the souls of your children is your responsibility before God. And so we take that seriously. We didn't do that perfectly. Not even all the outcomes are exactly the things that we would hope for, but we always kind of weighed that before the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said at the beginning, but I'll say it again. If we were to go through it all over again, it could have a totally different map, because I feel like the thing with education, especially in all departments, is it's changing all of the time. And I do think some of it depends on where you live. Like, I think there are some places where there's super strong homeschool communities and support systems. There are other places where that decision feels very isolating and like we have nothing here. And so, yeah, weighing all of those things and bringing it before God, and what is right for your kid may not be what's right for your best friend's kids or whatever. You gotta figure that out for your own family. So
you've started now on the other side of having 2 kids in university, a massive transition. You tried some things in the last year. You learned some of the things that you don't like to do. And you have just started a new role within the last month, and you're getting trained and thrown into the deep end. This is typical. I feel like every organization has great strategies for onboarding and training. And then it's like you show up in day one, they're like, let's go, and that's been it for you. So why don't you share what you can about what you are stepping into?
Absolutely. So when we dropped off Mercy at school, I honestly didn't have a clue what was next for me. And sorry if I'm rewinding too much, but I was at the gym one day and felt this conviction in my heart. I was kind of wrestling with God over it. I had been like scanning different websites with jobs, just trying to get some sort of like nudge. And the conviction was that as silly as it sounds, I hadn't stopped to pray and just ask that, God, what is it that you have for me next? And So I took that moment, even as that conviction hit, and I was praying. And as I was praying, I had a friend that I knew from a previous job and noticed him. I was at the gym while I was praying and noticed him working out with a few guys. And I was like, oh, I think he started working in like some type of recovery program or something. I wasn't 100% sure, but I felt this nudge to go and just ask him about what he was doing. And so I'm going to fast forward. That conversation led to a lot more conversations, which led me into a job interview. And then I received an offer from, it's called Capital Recovery Health. I guess I can share that much. It's I work for Capital Recovery Health.
When you say recovery, why don't you give people a little bit of color of what that is?
Yeah, so these are people that are working through from alcohol or drug addiction. So they are in recovery. I work in it's called a PHP, or a partial hospitalization program. And so our clients are at our site in Boscawen. They're there from like 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we do groups and classes and different things. And so I ended up being offered a role. I'm kind of a hybrid role is the best I can describe it, which
sounds like perfect for an ADHD person.
Yes, very much so. And this was one of those things where I did not know that this job existed. I kind of started with a conversation and just, you talk about lighting, God just lighting each step. And that was the process going into it. I would have a conversation.
Yeah.
I would get really excited. And then I would just have this moment of, okay, God, I need to bring this back to you. Like, is this where you are leading, or am I just eager to figure out the next thing? Like, I'm tired of wondering what I'm going to do. And God just continued to open doors. And now, again, I've been there for about a month, and this is probably the first job that I have done since I'll go all the way back to being on staff at a church, where it feels like day after day I'm having these moments where I'm seeing the way that God has wired me and built me and uniquely gifted me fit into a job in a really kind of special way. And it's not because it's been easy. This is not easy work. And I'm just a month in. Like, this is, it's hard work, but it is one of those things that I absolutely love it. The team that I get to work with there is absolutely incredible. But it's also been a major transition. We went from, I kind of spent the summer, I did a little bit of like part-time stuff, but I was home getting Mercy ready to go off to school. And then all of a sudden back to full-time work. So
I got to go to your staff Christmas party, which was really fun, and meet all these people that I get to hear about and that work with you in different roles and some fun personalities and characters. There's a lot of spirituality in this, which is kind of, if people know the 12-step program, which your program is not directly based on, but in recovery broadly, there's obviously that. And it's been cool because, you're still learning what that looks like, but there's not a closed door to talk about your faith. And that's a really cool part of the story.
Yeah, I've gotten to have some really neat conversations with clients. Even my coworkers. I feel like that's kind of the cool thing about this environment is people, just their openness to having conversations and the supportiveness of that. And so, I've met a couple of people along the way, even recently, somebody who I knew that I recognized them, but I hadn't made the connection. And then just today made the connection that they go to our church. They're like, oh, you sing on the worship team. Like, it was this really cool kind of moment where I was like, oh, all the pieces kind of came together. And that's one of the things, like in candor, as I was praying about this job, that I felt like God gave me this vision. Sorry, I'm going to get real controversial in here, but it was kind of this vision at church one morning of being in church with women from this job, and being able to sort of have that connection. And then today to meet this woman that's like, that's my church.
Wow.
And just, again, those kind of powerful moments of what God is doing, but it's still transition. We're walking through it right now, where now, I was home before and could do all the things. I felt like I was on top of it. And now I'm having to sort of navigate, okay, I'm working 40 hours, simple things like, what does cleaning the house look like? Like, what does do meals and grocery shopping and all of, like, what do you're you and I having time together. Like, what does that look like? And
When do we record our podcast?
when do we, which if you can't tell is when my brain is tired. But it's just, that's part of transition is.
Yeah.
So.
You had a story that you shared with me the other day because you felt the prompting of the Spirit to give a gift to somebody at your office.
Oh, yeah. So I had the chance to hear a story from one of our clients, and just an incredibly powerful story. But one of the things that they shared was that they had come to faith and it's interesting. Somebody had shared Jesus with them. And they're like, I just started this relationship with Jesus. That was kind of part of their story. And I heard that and sort of was just really praying for this person, hearing that, like, they're literally saying, like, this has just happened. I'm trying to figure this out. And the very next morning after this, I was having my quiet time. I love the Paul Tripp New Morning Mercies devotional. Mine missing a cover, underlined through and through. Like, I just love this devotional.
It looks like this book went to war.
Yeah, literally. And as I was reading it, I just felt God nudge me to gift this to this client. And I remember initially thinking, well, I could buy them a new one. Like, I don't need to give them this ratty thing. But no, it just was again, I felt that nudge, like, no, this is the one that you've underlined, that you've literally loved till the bindings come off. And so I threw it in my work bag and got to work that day and pulled the person aside at one moment and just kind of share, hey, you know what? You were sharing your story. I heard that. I've been praying, and I just feel like God asked me to gift this. I said, you can absolutely say no. You don't need, don't feel obligated, whatever. And they received it very kindly, and actually have come up today. We had a follow-up conversation that I've been reading. It has been so good, like, to just kind of bring me back. So we had another cool conversation around it, but that's been like moments like that where I just feel, man, I'll get emotional on the podcast. It's been very humbling. It's been very humbling to go from a month ago really not knowing, like, being like, God, I just don't know, what am I going to do? My kids are in college. Like, I feel like I don't even know who I am right now. And praying, sitting on a bench in the gym and having God say, just like, go ask this person, just ask them what they're doing. And to go from that to what I get to do every day right now is a huge gift.
I think one of the lies the enemy will often bring to us in transition is that, like, this question, like, is God done with me? Like, are my best days behind me? Like, that kind of a question. And I just want to say, like, I love your obedience to that. And so I want you to give you a gift today.
Oh my gosh.
So this is the New Morning Mercies book.
You got me the leather
I got you
bound.
the leather bound one. This one might last a little bit long. You can still give it away, and I'll buy you a new one. But that is a
yeah,
gift.
I might need 5 of them now. I'm gonna be giving them out left and right. This is awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, I appreciate that.
And there's a special. We are recording this the day before Bethany's birthday, and so there's a special note on the one that's on your birthday for you too. So you can check that out later. But.
Gosh, you're so good at the gift giving. Yeah, I'm just gonna tag on to what you said real quick, and then because obviously now I'm a kind of a wreck right now. But if someone's listening and they feel like, because that I feel like that's where I've been for a long time, is that feeling that my best days were behind me, that God had done what he was going to do. And it's a hard thing to say out loud because you know that it's not true, but this has been sort of this wrestling. And I think in some ways I've just sort of been riding it. I'm just going to not make noise. Like, I'll just, finish out I don't know what it is, but I'll finish out my days. And this job and God leading me to this place and the things that I get to do right now, I feel like I want to say it to the person that's listening who maybe they're not to this moment, and just for them to hear that if you are still breathing, that God has still purposed your life, and that your design and who you are, and maybe some of the things that seem confusing to you about how you are, like your gifts and quirks, that God's design, that he wants to use those, that he doesn't waste them. And I am standing in the beauty of that right now and some funny things in my job that I'm like, this weird thing about me that just, it makes sense here. And I think God has that for each one of you, that we are designed with a purpose. We're created, for his good works that he prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them. And I think as long as you are alive and breathing and walking, that he's not done. And so just keep and listen to God's nudges, like as silly as they may seem, a conversation at a gym with an old friend, whatever it is, you never know how God's going to lead you to that next thing. So,
wow, that's beautiful. I don't think I can actually one up that at all. I just need to receive that, walk it out in my own life, and really excited to see what God has. And, yeah, I'm just thankful. I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for getting to do this together and the journey that God's leading on. It's been fun to see you fully alive and sometimes fully exhausted.
All of the above.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. I think for me, it's always been like, there's a part of faith that involves some sweat. Like, it's like God says, like, I don't need you to do these things, but I'm going to invite you into the process. And we say yes to God. Sometimes we say yes and things don't work out the way that, like, you've had other things that you've started that just haven't been the thing, and that's okay. It feels like sometimes a misstep, but sometimes that is just the step before the one that's going to feel like, man, now I'm in cadence. And so keep walking with the Spirit, keep calling me out. I'll receive it in humility, and I'm excited to see what God has ahead. So thank you, listeners, so much for being a part of this journey. Thank you for all the feedback, for listening, for following, subscribing, all the things that we mention every week. It feels odd to pivot from that moment towards anything promotional, but I just want to say this has been a really fun thing to do as well. It's been neat for me. Like, I've even had like friends who I go to the gym with who've been like, hey, I listened to your podcast. Like, and that's like a cool thing to be able to see how God's using this in people that are in different places in life. We're so grateful, and we look forward to talking to you all next week.
Yes. And it is my birthday.
In the multiverse.
In the multiverse. Yeah. But I'm throwing out, for my birthday, I just want more YouTube subscribers because I'm still waiting on that dance from Andy.
It's creeping forward. I think by the time I'm 50, I'll be doing it.
No, we're going to get this done.
I think TikTok may be banned by the time.
Listeners, I need you to work with me. Let's get this done.
That's all right. Well,
yeah, help a lady out. Let's get it done.
We have busy listeners. They seem to be listening on audio more than video, and that's fine. No problem. So anyway, thank you for listening.
Yes.
Or watching.
Thanks for listening. We love you all. If it weren't for you, it'd just be Andy and I
talking into
microphones in our lonely little studio. So thanks.
Bye.
Bye.